You did what? My voice cracked as I stared at Carol across the kitchen table, my stomach twisting into knots. She didn't even flinch. Her manicured nails tapped rhythmically on the coffee mug she held, her expression calm, too calm. I used it for the wedding, she said, shrugging as though we were discussing pocket change. Luke needed help with the costs, and it's family money. You'll get over it. Family money, I echoed, my voice rising. That was my money. I worked 2 years waiting tables to save for college, Carol. You said you'd invest it for me. And I did, she said, her tone sharper now. I invested it in something important. Your brother's wedding. Her son. Not my brother. Luke wasn't even pretending to care about the fallout. As far as he was concerned, his dream wedding, with its extravagant venue and flower arrangements that probably cost more than my tuition, was far more valuable than anything I could have planned for myself. My blood boiled, but before I could respond, my father walked into the room, coffee in hand. What's all this yelling about? He asked, his eyes darting between us. Ask Carol, I snapped. She spent my college savings on Luke's wedding. My name is Emma Williams, and I'm 19 years old. For as long as I can remember, my stepmother, Carol, has been the dominant force in our house. My mom passed away when I was 10, and by the time my father remarried, I was desperate for some version of normalcy. But Carol made it clear early on that her priorities were her biological son, Luke, and herself. I became an afterthought, someone to nod at during dinner, but not worth investing in. When I got my first job at 16, I started saving immediately. Every tip, every extra shift, went into my college fund. I wanted to go to a local university and study nursing, a dream my mom had shared for me. Carol always talked a big game about financial responsibility, so when she suggested I let her invest my savings to grow it, I believed her. I thought I could trust her. I was wrong. I don't understand, my dad said, scratching his head as Carol breezed past him, clearly done with the conversation. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know until now, I said, my voice trembling. She said she'd invest the money for me, but she spent it all on Luke's wedding. He frowned, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He hated confrontation, and Carol knew it. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding, he said weakly. Let me talk to her. A misunderstanding? I said, my voice rising. Dad, she admitted it. She doesn't even think she did anything wrong. My father didn't have an answer. He muttered something about needing to get to work and disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the weight of my stepmother's betrayal pressing down on me. She had stolen my future, and my father was too spineless to stand up to her. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my anger turned into resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. That money was mine, and if my father wouldn't fight for me, I'd fight for myself. The next morning, I called a local lawyer whose name I found on a flyer at the library. I need to know if there's anything I can do, I told him, explaining the situation. It's my savings. I worked for it. Can I get it back? Possibly, he said, his voice calm and professional. If you can prove the money was yours and that she used it without your consent, you have a case. But it won't be easy. Are you prepared to go to court? I hesitated. Taking my stepmother to court felt drastic, but what choice did I have? Carol wasn't going to admit she was wrong, and my father clearly wasn't going to intervene. Yes, I said firmly, I'm prepared. When I told my father about the lawsuit, he was horrified. Emma, do you really want to do this? He asked, pacing the living room. It's just going to cause more tension in the family. She already caused tension, I shot back. Dad, she stole from me. This isn't about family, it's about what's right. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment I thought he might side with me. But then Carol walked in, her face a mask of irritation. So, what's the plan, Emma? She sneered. You're going to drag your family through the mud over a few $1,000s? Real mature? It's not just a few $1,000s, I said, my voice shaking but steady. It's my future, And I won't let you take that from me. Her lips curled into a smirk. Do what you have to do, sweetheart. You won't win. That was the moment I knew there was no turning back. Carol thought she could intimidate me into backing down, but she underestimated just how far I was willing to go. With the lawyer's help, I filed the lawsuit and started gathering evidence, bank statements, pay stubs, anything that proved the money was mine. It wasn't just about the $8,000 anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about refusing to let someone else dictate my worth. Carol had stolen more than my savings. She'd stolen my trust. And I was determined to get it back. Filing the lawsuit against Carol felt like stepping into uncharted territory. I wasn't just taking on my stepmother. I was taking on the fragile balance of my family. My father avoided me more than ever, retreating to his workshop whenever I was home. Carol, on the other hand, went out of her way to antagonize me. She'd leave passive-aggressive notes on the fridge like, maybe save up again, third time's the charm, or make snide comments when we crossed paths. But no matter how hard she pushed, I refused to budge. The court date was set for 3 months later, giving me just enough time to prepare my case. My lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was a patient man in his late 40s who specialized in small claims disputes. We'll need more than just your word, he said during one of our meetings. The key is proving that the money was yours, and that Carol used it without your consent. Do you have any records of your savings or a written agreement about the investment? I have bank statements showing deposits from my job, I said, pulling a folder from my bag. And I wrote her a note when I gave her the money, asking her to invest it. It's not a formal agreement, but it's something. He nodded, flipping through the documents. It's a good start. I'll subpoena her financial records. If she spent the money on the wedding, it should show up in her accounts. The weeks leading up to the trial were tense. My father barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was always to question my decision. Emma, he said one evening, standing awkwardly in the doorway of my room, do you really want to go through with this? Carol's furious, and you know how she is when she's angry. She's furious because she got caught, I replied, not looking up from my laptop. And yes, Dad, I'm going through with it. She stole from me. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his thinning hair. I don't want this to tear the family apart. I looked at him then, anger bubbling to the surface. She already tore it apart when she decided I didn't matter, Dad. This isn't my fault, it's hers. He didn't have an answer for that, and he left without another word. Despite the tension at home, I found solace in my friends. They rallied around me, helping me stay focused when doubt crept in. You're doing the right thing, my best friend Lily said during one of our late-night coffee runs. She had no right to take your money, and she deserves to face the consequences. But what if I lose? I asked, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at me since the beginning. What if the court sides with her? You won't lose, Lily said firmly. You've worked too hard for this, and even if it doesn't go your way, you're standing up for yourself. That's what matters. Her words gave me strength on the days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. The lawsuit wasn't just about the $8,000 anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice and proving that I wouldn't be silenced or overlooked. As the court date approached, my lawyer uncovered a surprising lead. Among the financial records he subpoenaed, there were inconsistencies in Carol's spending. Large withdrawals had been made from a joint account she shared with my father, but the money hadn't just gone to Luke's wedding. It appeared Carol had been funneling money into a personal account for years, using it for luxury items and trips my father knew nothing about. This changes things, Mr. Peterson said during our final meeting before the trial. This isn't just about your savings anymore. If we present this evidence, it could expose a pattern of financial mismanagement. The revelation left me reeling. I'd always known Carol was self-serving, but this was on another level. I debated whether to include the new evidence in the trial. On one hand, it strengthened my case. On the other, it would likely devastate my father. I don't know if I can do this to him, I admitted to Lily the night before the hearing. It's going to break him. Emma, he deserves to know the truth, Lily said gently. He's been living in her shadow for too long. Maybe this is what he needs to wake up. The morning of the trial, I sat in the courtroom feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Carol sat across the room, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She looked as calm and polished as ever, her perfectly styled hair and expensive jewelry making her seem untouchable. My father sat beside her, his expression a mixture of confusion and unease. He didn't even look at me. When the judge entered and the trial began, I forced myself to focus on the facts. My lawyer presented my bank statements, the note I'd written to Carol, and records showing her extravagant spending. "The evidence is clear," Mr. Peterson said as he addressed the court. "The defendant used my client's savings without her consent, prioritizing her personal interests over the well-being of her stepdaughter." Carol's lawyer tried to argue that the money had been given to her willingly, but when Mr. Peterson presented the subpoenaed financial records, the courtroom fell silent. The withdrawals from my father's accounts, the luxury purchases, everything was laid bare. I glanced at my father as the evidence was read aloud. His face paled and he leaned back in his chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. Carol, for the first time, looked rattled. When it was my turn to speak, I addressed the judge directly. "That money was my future," I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. I trusted Carol to help me grow it, but instead, she took it for herself. "This isn't just about the $8,000. It's about the principle. I deserve justice, and I deserve to be heard." As I sat down, I felt a surge of determination. Whatever the outcome, I knew I had done everything in my power to stand up for myself. The courtroom was electric with tension as the judge leaned forward, reviewing the evidence my lawyer had presented. The weight of what had just been revealed, Carol's years of siphoning money from my father's accounts, hung heavy in the air. For the first time since the trial began, Carol looked genuinely uncomfortable, her usual air of superiority replaced by a tight-lipped expression of worry. My father, on the other hand, looked shattered. "Mrs. Williams," the judge said, her voice firm, "it's clear from the evidence presented that you used Miss Williams' savings without her consent, despite claiming otherwise. More concerning is the pattern of financial mismanagement demonstrated by these withdrawals from joint family accounts." Carol's lawyer scrambled to respond, offering weak defenses about family dynamics and shared responsibility. But the judge wasn't swayed. She held up the financial records as if to emphasize the undeniable facts. "This isn't just a case of poor communication or misunderstanding. It's a breach of trust." I glanced at my father. He was sitting rigidly, staring straight ahead, his face pale. I could see the betrayal sinking in, each new revelation cutting deeper than the last. When it was Carol's turn to speak, she tried to regain her composure. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carefully measured, "this has all been blown out of proportion. I only used Emma's savings because I thought it would benefit the family. My son's wedding was a significant event, and—" "You spent $8,000 on your son's wedding while claiming it was an investment for Miss Williams," the judge interrupted sharply. "And the additional evidence shows you've been withdrawing substantial sums for personal expenses unrelated to the family's welfare. Do you honestly believe this is defensible?" Carol faltered, her practiced facade cracking for the first time. I didn't mean for it to—" "Enough," the judge said, cutting her off. "This case is about more than just money. It's about accountability, Mrs. Williams, and your actions show a clear pattern of selfishness and disregard for the trust placed in you." As the judge prepared to deliver her verdict, my heart pounded. I hadn't dared to hope for this level of validation, but now it felt within reach. When she finally spoke, her words were like a weight lifting off my chest. "In light of the evidence, I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Williams," the judge declared. "Mrs. Williams is ordered to repay the $8,000 in full, with interest, within 60 days. Furthermore, I recommend a review of the defendant's financial dealings to ensure no further improprieties have occurred." A hush fell over the courtroom. Carol's face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. My father's head dropped into his hands, as if the full extent of his wife's betrayal had finally sunk in. I exhaled, relief washing over me. The money itself wasn't the only victory. It was the recognition of what I'd endured, the validation that I wasn't just some silly, overly dramatic teenager. I'd been wronged, and now everyone knew it. As we left the courtroom, Carol shot me a glare, her voice low and venomous as she hissed, "You'll regret this, Emma." But I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I felt stronger than her. "No, Carol," I said, meeting her gaze head-on. "You'll regret underestimating me." My father caught up with me in the hallway, his face lined with exhaustion and regret. "Emma," he began, his voice faltering, "I didn't know. I had no idea she was—" "You didn't want to know," I interrupted, my tone sharp but not unkind. "You looked the other way because it was easier than confronting her. But this is what happens when you ignore the truth." He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "You're right. I failed you. And I'm sorry." It wasn't the heartfelt apology I'd always dreamed of, but it was a start. For the first time, I saw my father not as the passive figure who had let me down, but as a man grappling with the consequences of his choices. It didn't excuse what had happened, but it gave me a sense of closure I hadn't expected. As I walked out of the courthouse, the sun was shining, the weight of the trial finally behind me. The battle had been long and painful, but I'd stood up for myself and won. Carol's actions were exposed for what they were, and my father's blind loyalty to her had been shaken. I glanced at my phone, where a text from Lily lit up the screen. "You did it? Drinks on me tonight?" Smiling, I typed back, "Absolutely." The fight wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming my agency, proving to myself that I had the strength to demand what I deserved. And now, with the verdict in my favor, I could finally move forward. The days after the trial felt surreal. The $8,000 was officially mine again, though Carol's begrudging compliance with the court order made it clear this wasn't over for her. She returned home in icy silence, avoiding both my father and me at every opportunity. It was strange to see her so subdued, her usual dominance replaced by a simmering resentment. But for once, she wasn't calling the shots, and that was enough for me. My father, on the other hand, seemed lost. I caught him in the living room one evening, staring blankly at a pile of Carol's financial records that had come to light during the trial. "She lied to me," he said softly, almost to himself. "All these years, and I didn't see it." I sat down across from him, unsure what to say. "You trusted her," I said finally. "That's not a crime, Dad. But ignoring what she was doing, that hurt me." He looked up at me then, his eyes heavy with regret. "I should have stood up for you," he admitted. "I should have listened." For a moment I wanted to lash out, to tell him exactly how much his silence had cost me, but instead, I just nodded. "You still can," I said, "by making sure nothing like this happens again." Carol moved out a week later, taking her smirking sense of entitlement with her. She left a curt note on the kitchen counter. "I'll let you know where to send the rest of my things." My father didn't say much about her departure, but there was a new stillness in the house that I found comforting. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to walk on eggshells in my own home. Luke, predictably, stayed silent. Whether he didn't know how to confront the truth of his mother's actions or simply didn't care, I never heard a word of apology from him. Part of me wanted closure, but another part realized I didn't need it. I'd fought my battle and won. That was enough. I threw myself into planning for college, finally able to see a path forward. The $8,000 wasn't just money, it was proof that I had taken control of my future. I started researching programs, comparing costs, and figuring out how to stretch every dollar. For the first time in months, I felt excited, hopeful. My father offered to help. "I can't make up for what happened," he said one evening as I worked through an application. "But I want to support you however I can." I hesitated, unsure if I could trust his offer after everything. But then I saw the sincerity in his face. He was trying, and that mattered. "Thank you, Dad," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. In the quiet moments, I thought about what the trial had taught me, not just about Carol or my father, but about myself. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who avoided conflict and tried to keep the peace. But standing up to Carol had shown me that I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. I wasn't just the girl who worked nights as a waitress or the forgotten stepdaughter. I was someone who could demand what she deserved and fight for her future. And that future was just beginning. A few months later, I stood outside my dorm building, staring up at the red brick walls that would house my next chapter. It felt surreal to finally be here, ready to start college after everything I'd been through. My dad had insisted on helping me move in, and I let him, though he spent most of the time apologizing for carrying boxes the wrong way. For the first time in a long time, his nervous energy didn't irritate me. It felt genuine. "Are you sure you don't need anything else?" he asked for the 5th time, hovering by the door as I unpacked. "I'm good, Dad," I said with a smile. "Thanks for everything." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'm proud of you, Emma. You've worked so hard for this." Hearing those words made my chest tighten. They didn't erase the past, but they showed me that he was trying, and that meant something. As I settled into my new routine, I realized just how much had changed. College was everything I'd dreamed it would be, challenging, exciting, and full of possibility. Every class, every conversation with a professor or peer felt like a step toward the life I'd been fighting for. And every time I opened a textbook I'd bought with my own money, I felt a surge of pride. This was my accomplishment, and no one could take it away from me. Back home, things were quieter. Carol was gone for good, and my dad was slowly learning to navigate life without her. We weren't as close as I might have hoped, but we were rebuilding something. He called every Sunday to check in, and I appreciated his effort more than I ever thought I would. As for Carol and Luke, they faded into the background of my life, their importance shrinking with each passing day. I didn't need their validation, nor did I waste time waiting for an apology that would never come. I'd already gotten what I needed: my independence, my sense of self, and my future. One weekend, Lily came to visit, and we sat on a bench near campus, drinking overpriced coffee and laughing about the ridiculousness of dorm life. "You're killing it, Emma," she said, bumping my shoulder. "After everything that happened, you're still standing. And not just standing, you're thriving." Her words stuck with me. For so long, I'd been defined by what others thought of me: Carol's dismissiveness, my father's inaction, even Luke's indifference. But now, for the first time, I wasn't living in their shadow. I was carving my own path, and it felt incredible. As I walked back to my dorm that evening, the campus buzzing with life around me, I thought about the girl I'd been a year ago, hesitant, uncertain, and too afraid to stand up for herself. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and ready to take on whatever came next. This wasn't just a resolution to a chapter, it was the beginning of something new. My life was mine, and I was finally ready to live it.